I'm Pastor Ramon Smith. I'm one of the hosts of Saginaw Cares, and I have Rhonda Chambers. She's our associate pastor and also the co-host of Saginaw Cares. And the purpose of what we're doing here today is to inform, to inspire, and to get you involved. Today we have with us Matt Hall from Texas Raise Your Hand. And so we're just wondering, Matt, why don't you tell us about the arc of your career? How did you, as a little boy, say to yourself, you know what, when I grow up, I want to work for Texas, raise your hand? How did you get to where you are today?
No, I was thinking when I was a little boy, it was very much astronaut territory right up until, right up until maybe middle school. I was still hanging out hope for that. But no, I my arc started a little bit similar to my mother's. I grew up really admiring my mom, who's a public school teacher. I wanted to be a public school teacher, and I became a public school teacher. I just became a public school teacher in an interesting setting. It was 2009, the height of the recession, and instead of teaching here in town, I got my first job teaching at a public middle school on the demilitarized zone, on the South Korean side.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. And it was an amazing experience. It was all of the highs and lows of your first year as a teacher, but in a very unique and beautiful setting. And that was also around the time that I first accepted Jesus Christ in my life. And I became a Christian while I was there. I came back and went to graduate school for government and political science. And while I was doing that, I got the chance to take an internship in the Texas legislature. This is 2011. And I thought, cool, I'm going to do this for one session. I'm going to make my impact. And then I'm maybe going to go back into the classroom. 2011 was an interesting year. The legislature had to make some hard decisions on funding. And I got to work with a great legislator on those issues. And I would say around folks who get a chance to work in the Capitol, it's something you either, that first set, if you love it, you'll love it. And I realized I loved it. And so I transitioned eventually into being a legislative staffer in the building, eventually becoming a legislative director. And then it was 2019 when I saw this opportunity with Raise Your Hand. They had posted for it a regional advocacy director position, someone who maybe had a legislative background that could work with local partners to bring the community into the legislative process. And it was anchored in my hometown of Fort Worth. And after talking with my wife, I applied, and that's how I ended up here, where I'm now the senior regional advocacy director. I manage our advocacy and various community partnerships, corporate, public, private, and faith chamber as well, for the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Okay.
That's awesome. What way, so Raise Your Hand Texas, tell me what you do with Raise Your Hand Texas and what their focus is and how we can partner with you.
Sure. So a little background. Raise Your Hand Texas is a statewide nonpartisan public education foundation that was established in 2006 by Mr. Charles Butt, the chairman of H-E-B Grocery Stores, with the goal of advancing public education. That's typically been around supporting public education funding, supporting the educators, also supporting workforce development within the public education space. Public schools are the backbone of our economic growth and our ability to be competitive. We're very blessed here in Saginaw with a fantastic school district, Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. And so our work stems really around focusing at the state legislative level in the Texas Capitol, working to bring local partners into the building to talk with lawmakers and engage with legislative staff and policymakers in order to advocate for increased investment in our public schools. a little bit of my specific work there. I work directly in our advocacy, in the grassroots advocacy side of our work, partnering with congregations in the faith community, but also chambers of commerce, individual private employers, parents groups, educators, pretty much any group where 2 or 3 are gathered that really like public schools and want to be part of the legislative process, or just learn how it works. It can feel at times like an inaccessible process when it's really not, and it shouldn't be. But helping them engage in that space more. Typically that tends to look like almost like a set of seasons. Normally, for those who don't really engage in the legislature, we don't have a full-time state legislature normally. It meets regularly for 5 months every odd year, and they have to do 2 years of lawmaking in that time. And so around that time is one space, but our season kind of begins right after that. And that's usually around educating community partners on, objectively, policy-wise, what's happened in the Capitol. How does school finance look? How has laws that affect teacher recruitment and retention, how do they look? Career and technical education, workforce readiness. It's then engaging with community partners over that next year and a half, getting feedback on important things that matter to local community partners. Before this last legislative session, we worked with about 16,000 individuals, from faith leaders to parents to the business community, on their thoughts relating to standardized testing. That actually informed the legislation we supported on STAR testing this past legislative session. That actually made it out of the House, which is hard to do its first time. And then when it's time for that regular session, it's educate, engage, now it's activate. And so it's bringing folks into the building, providing those opportunities, whether you've got a full day to go down or you have 20 seconds and you just need a very easy way to connect with your lawmaker and on a key legislative topic. We work to make that accessible, because those are tools that folks can take with them on any issue. While our issues are public education, these advocacy tools are things that neighbors can take and engage lawmakers on any policy topic that matters to them.
You mentioned the partnership with faith leaders and community leaders, and I know that at Saginaw United Methodist Church, we partner with Saginaw Elementary School. We have a long history with that wonderful school, and being able to reach out, and we're starting our Kids Hope program and things like that, because we too want to invest in the young people to help them have the quality education that we all desire for all the children. So how can our faith community, how can Saginaw United Methodist Church partner and work together so that we can all benefit the children?
It's that this relationship you have with your local public school is this great exemplar. In some faith spaces, that actually at the grassroots level are partnerships that we help work at a local level to connect. Very often you have communities of faith that want to be part of a process, and it begins with engaging with that campus, finding that local public school, going in and respectfully and humbly asking them, what are your needs? How can we partner with you? Which your congregation already is doing, but building what I like to call the connective tissue with the public school system. So you develop institutional knowledge about it. It's not just hearing what's affecting public education or the great things that are happening within public education. You're seeing it. And that makes faith leaders subject matter experts. And subject matter experts are extremely valuable in the legislative process. I say this because for state lawmakers, they have, especially members of the Texas House, if they're not a member or if they're not a chair of a committee, they tend to only have around 2 full-time staff. And they have districts that are twice the size of a British member of parliament, and they preside over the 8th largest economy in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, not the nation, the world. And they have to deal with hundreds of policy issues. And so legislators and staff, including me when I was a staff, are always looking for subject matter experts back home Who are those partners they can talk to when a piece of legislation is being proposed and say, hey, how is this going to impact my local elementary school? They're going to look for that educator that can tell them, hey, how is this going to affect maybe your classroom? They're thinking that, of course, superintendent too, that can say that 30,000-foot view. They're thinking that business owner, hey, how is this going to help with building that workforce pipeline? If we are able to fund career and tech education better, how's that going to affect? And for faith leaders, they can play a very strong role in there because you come in from a space that is so deeply connected to the community, and you know the needs of the local school. And so very often lawmakers have a deep well of respect for clergy. And if you have the ability, if you've already have that local connection to the public school, a great way to partner with us is learn how to connect in the legislative process and be that subject matter expert. You already are, because you know those educators, you know the needs of the school, you have that relationship with the district, and you have a broader relationship with the community. Legislators and legislative staff are always wanting to connect on that. It is always going to be so valuable. It is a great way to positively contribute to the policymaking process and to be part of the civic work of state government. And that's a great way where traditionally we've plugged in with partners of faith.
That's great. I love those opportunities where we can get together and help others. So
You talked about earlier how when you were working in South Korea, how it was at that point that you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior.
I did.
All right. So how does your faith inform the work that you're doing today with Texas? Raise your hand.
Sure. So, and I'll disclose as a matter of my personal faith, that first year, I would say that public school educators and congregational leaders, there is some synthesis is one thing I've learned in maybe the 6 legislative sessions I've been in, that there's a little bit of commonality in that these are both forms. One is secular and one is not, but they are both forms of kind of ministry. My first year, especially as a 22-year-old, I cannot believe that I was 22 years old at that time, 37 now, being in a classroom with students with varying needs for differentiated instruction, different household climates, different academic needs, different socioeconomic backgrounds. You become, I think it's a phrase William Wilberforce used, you become feelingly alive to the experiences of others, and you feel connected to something bigger, and it deeply informed at a private level outside the public school space. It began to work its way on my heart in a way that I think I was not expecting. Outside of public school, I became directly involved in talking with folks who had been North Korean defectors, who had been individuals and in other spaces that benefited from social ministries. And I began to be more exposed into that space. And I think God makes a self-disclosure to us at the time that is most afforded, and that is when God self-disclosed to me, and I accepted Christ into my life as a matter of personal faith. So there was my faith journey is deeply connected into public policy. Where I draw not just into the immediate work of my advocacy space now, but I would say across my career, I have tried to have words to describe it, and I think now I have a better vocabulary. But God is in these opportunities to constructively engage in civic engagement or the democratic process or the policymaking process, which of course UMC congregations have such a beautiful history of doing. This is an invitation to covenantal work. God is always asking us to engage in beautiful acts of covenantal creation, and I didn't fully understand that at that immediate moment. I wouldn't have had the vocabulary to tell you that's what it was, but that's what it was, and that's what at a personal level drives me. Of course, Raise Your Hand is a secular, non-sectarian organization, but our alignments with communities of faith, is kind of a testament to there's such a great opportunity to engage in constructive covenantal work, and that's kind of been something at the root of me, not just for this immediate work, but even in hard moments when I was in the legislature, and sometimes it is hard to get the votes you need to pass something sometimes, and having to really trust in the process and pray over it, and I would say sometimes really pray to God, please, hey, if there's a way, and sometimes there is a way out of no way, and you get to do something that's positive and beautiful. That's fine.
I like that you connected your faith with that as well, because I think that, and Pastor Ramon and I were talking earlier about Micah 6:8. And that we need to do those acts of justice and love, mercy, and be able to walk humbly with God and with our partners around us. And I think that we are creatures of mind, body, and soul, and we need to be able to help the younger ones do that as well. So love the opportunities to pull faith into the forefront of it.
Well, and I would say this, particularly when it comes to the arena of state government. Persons of faith, both clergy and lay persons, have such a great opportunity because they can engage in that conversation from a different lens. Clergy, for example, go in with so much respect and moral authority when checking in with lawmakers. Lawmakers love love to receive faith leaders, and you can also have very direct conversations. That's just a different perspective that can be brought, and so there's just a unique perspective when we are able to take our ability, our faith, and set it towards appropriate but constructive civic work. Really amazing things can happen.
Yep. We want to be able to engage beyond the walls of the church and be able to help people realize that it's not just money that is needed in these situations. More often it is those heart-to-heart conversations and helping young students to thrive, and giving them the opportunities so that they too can become contributing members of society in a positive way. Absolutely. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about before we conclude our podcast about Raise Your Hand Texas?
Sure. Whether we're in the middle of a legislative session or we're right now probably about to move into what's called usually the interim, which is when they're not in session, there's a lot of opportunities for individuals to get involved. A great way was asked, what are some ways that folks can help us? The way to help us is to become informed and involved. And to that end, if you want to know how school funding operates at the state level, if you want to be involved in the policymaking process, that is not intended to be distant. That is, an invitation to engage in some beautiful creativity. And so I would suggest go to www.raiseyourhandtexas.org, and you can sign up for our regular newsletters. They're structured a certain way. It tends to be a few things to know and one thing to do.
Oh, I like that.
We intentionally make it as accessible, knowing folks are busy, knowing that there's for some folks it may be the first time you have ever engaged in civic space or done anything in engaging in the policymaking process. So we'll usually pick a few key policy updates that are happening, straightforward, and then one advocacy action, one constructive advocacy action that you can engage in a positive way with policymakers and legislative staff. And so I would, if you're interested, please go to our website and sign up for those legislative updates. And if you would like to learn more about how to get involved, we have many ongoing programs, particularly during the interim. We'll be reaching out again to community partners to inform our legislative priorities around testing, around supporting educators. So there should be some really exciting programmatic offerings too.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. And we really appreciate the work that you're doing, the work that God has called you to. And we'll be looking forward to talking with you in the future and seeing how we can help.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.